The V. Well, the way we're going, we're going to have a super V.
Another big talker for the convention? President Trump's announcement of a new coronavirus treatment using convalescent plasma.
From the beginning of this pandemic, the president has asked FDA to cut back red tape to try to speed medical products into the hands of providers, patients, and American consumers. And I just want to echo the president's thanks to the more than 17,000 men and women who work at FDA. They have worked day and night.
FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn. Plus, the new Postmaster General is returning to Congress to testify before a House panel that has sharply criticized him. Monday's hearing comes after the House approved legislation over the weekend to reverse changes in Postal Service operations and send $25 billion to shore up the agency ahead of the November election. Postmaster General DeJoy testified Friday in the Senate that his #1 priority is to ensure election mail arrives on time. However, DeJoy said he would not restore recent cuts to mailboxes and sorting equipment. Also new tonight, family members asking for help finding a U.S. Army soldier assigned to Fort Hood who recently switched units, an alleged victim of sexual abuse.
Police in Killeen, Texas say 23-year-old Sergeant Elder Fernandez hasn't been seen since Monday when a staff sergeant dropped him off at home. Fernandez's mother and the U.S. Army are asking for the public's help finding him.
I don't know where he's at right now. I don't know what he's feeling. I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know what's going on with him.
Fernandez is the third soldier from Fort Hood to go missing in the past year. Chris DeMayo, Fox News.
I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Pick up dinner for you and the family at Chili's. We got you covered with a variety of delicious family platter options, like our fajita trio, Cajun chicken pasta, or our crispy chicken crispers. Or order off our new menu for you and a friend and indulge in our tasty burgers, tacos, and ribs. Get your Chili's favorites in a way that works for you. Call 648-7377 or WhatsApp 929-7376 for curbside pickup orders. Or get delivery with Good to Go. Chili's, you can still savor the moments at home.
Hafidade, this is Carl from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future. Whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community, our dedicated team in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified, serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. At least so long as I got anything to say about it. And I usually have a lot to say about just about anything you can imagine right here on Tall Tales, as you are very familiar with the process. Let me see here. I have my post. Yeah, I got them both. Okay, we start out with something called Zemi-Ikotni. That's my backwards bilingual play on words. Literally translated, Zemi-Ikotni means press as you were press the meat. but I turn it around a little bit so that it sounds like Meet the Press. Eat your heart out, you guys over there on PMSNBC, because our Meet the Press is a whole lot better than yours. I'm not like Chuck Todd coming on TV and promising to be neutral and fair and objective as I toss every softball that I've got in my sea bag to any Democrat who comes along. No, I don't pretend to be fair and objective. I have my biases, which by now I think are pretty well known. So I start out the program with Jimmy Cudney, and I usually beat up on the Daily News pretty bad, because the Daily News, instead of running local editorials, runs boilerplate from USA Today or Gannett News Service. Today's no exception. They're running somebody named Lionel Beaner, B-E-H-N-E-R. I pronounced it Beaner. Please don't accuse me of being racist. That's his name. A member of the USA Today Board of Contributors. And he's got a dynamite topic today, which I think everybody on Guam is extremely concerned about. And this is the title of the editorial: Why the Stolen Election in Belarus Matters to the United States. How many nights' sleep have you lost over the stolen election in Belarus, Jose?
Let me count. 0.
Yeah.
0 is a number.
0 is the number. So that's what the Daily News tries to pass off as an editorial. So I go from there to the Post, which ordinarily does a very workmanlike job on putting together editorials. And there's a lot to talk about today as far as the editorial and some things that are derivative of the editorial. So the editorial wants to know if we're okay with a legislature that's kind of asleep and a dictatorial governor. And here's how the editorial sounds. A quick glance at some of the more heavily frequented places on island Sunday show that many of us who call Guam home are complying with the governor's stay-at-home order. Streets were nearly empty of motorists and pedestrians. A number of restaurants that are exempt from the stay-at-home order with curbside to-go service chose to close temporarily. People stayed away from beaches and parks that were being patrolled to keep watch over stay-at-home order violators. Hopefully, they start out a sentence with hopefully. So, as you know, I go through these editorials, such as they are, with my blue pencil, and I circle grammatical errors and errors in English usage. Hopefully is an adverb. Everybody except the Daily News. Hopefully, the men who are still out on this, the few who are still out on the streets are truly essential workers at the front line of this pandemic. On Thursday and Friday, we collectively heard from the governor that we are on near total lockdown, again, for at least a week. Stay home, she ordered, unless your job is deemed essential. Governor Leon Guerrero's decision was prompted by the recent spike of Wuhan virus cases. On July 23, we had 332 confirmed cases of Wuhan virus, 5 deaths, and 83 active cases. On Saturday, August 23, we had 820 confirmed cases, and this editorial says 7 deaths and 419 active cases. I think the number of deaths is overstated. The sixth person that is counted was dead on arrival at the hospital, and cause of death was a heart attack. But we want to raise that count up as high as we can. So he tested positive for Wuhan virus, so we got to count him. That seems to be the logic involved here. But the surge in confirmed cases also stemmed from the increase in testing over the past few weeks. A month ago, Guam saw test numbers that ranged from fewer than 200 to around 500, even when the public clamored for more testing. In the past 2 weeks, testing has been ramped up, including 1,400 tested in one day 2 Saturdays ago. What has also contributed to the heightened level of public concern in this pandemic was the confirmation that Governor Ken Leon Guerrero, her son, also known as Joaquin Cook, yeah, and CEO of the Bank of Guam, Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio, and congressional delegate candidate William Castro, a sitting senator, were among the high-profile Wuhan virus cases in recent days. Now, this sounds like if this had just been Joe Smuckahukowitz and or Herman Sixpack or something like that, we wouldn't care. But these are Manakilu. So now we've got to pay more attention here. It's the governor, the governor's son, the lieutenant governor, a sitting senator. Now we got to pay some attention to this. With the recent Wuhan virus developments in our community, many people have agreed with the governor on the near total lockdown. Many have a sense of fear of this disease and don't mind being told to stay home and put their livelihoods on hold. But not everyone agrees. A number of people in our community worry about setbacks our small businesses continue to struggle with. Not all of our small businesses have been able to keep going. Some have closed or have indicated they will close, and the jobs they supported are gone. There are also members of our community who question whether a near total lockdown was the best approach. They've argued that targeting pockets of Wuhan virus spread should have been the focus of enforcement without shutting down the entire island. Yeah, just pockets of enforcement like the governor, lieutenant governor, and the governor's son. There's a pocket. So
deep pockets.
Yeah, so those three had it, so we got to shut down the whole island. We have been asked by multiple people who don't buy the all-or-nothing approach, to what extent are we willing to give up our constitutionally guaranteed freedom to be out in public and to talk and mingle with others, especially in public places? In an open letter to federal officials, more than 450 public health, human rights, and legal experts and organizations, including the American Civil Liberties Union, cautioned the infringements of on liberties due to mandatory lockdowns must be proportional to the risk presented by those affected, using the least restrictive means to protect public health, and must be regularly revisited to ensure that they are still needed as the epidemic evolves. The Guam legislature, which holds the power to be the advocate for us as residents, when there is a question on whether the governor has sole authority in this pandemic without legislative permission and the implementation of some of her powers, has been largely absent, distracted, or silent. Based on the past few months' gubernatorial decision-making, a group of physicians and others on the governor's Physicians Advisory Council has had more say than the senators. I don't remember voting for anybody on the Physicians Advisory Council. Did you, Jose?
They must have canceled that election.
Yeah, we do that a lot around here. Some of their decisions have resulted in direct or indirect benefits to their private practice in private hospitals or clinics. This conflict of interest issue has been raised before, and the legislature has been silent. The governor holds meetings with this council that have not been made accessible to the public via video conferencing. There are secrecy and conflict issues that have come up. And again, the legislature has been quiet. I guess they just don't want to get involved. So there's some kind of spin-off from that editorial, a couple of other op-ed pieces, and I'm going to go into those. I'm going to start out with one from Helen Middlebrook, who writes a column for the Post. It's a pretty good columnist. Helen's a mom, a grandma, a great-grandma, a really nice person to talk to.
And she always delivers.
And she has an extremely interesting way of expressing the insights that she brings to most topics. Today, she's kind of stealing my thunder, so I'm going to read from her column. But before I do, Jose, I want you to beep the horn a couple of times. Go ahead. Yeah. Because Helen is a little bit sarcastic and facetious in this column. And I thought that had been my job up until now. But I'm glad to have a little help. And this is a letter to Dear Coronavirus. I cannot believe you're still lingering after all the abuse you've been through in the last 2 months. You've been out there spreading happily the way viruses are wont to do, and you're still catching the blame for all kinds of government overreach and citizen abuse that is not your fault. Yeah, good sentence, Helen. I mean, coronavirus, it wasn't your fault that back in the spring, the CDC jettisoned the guidance of 2003 Medical Examiners and Coroners Handbook on death registration and fetal death reporting, and the CDC's Handbook on Medical Certification of Death to adopt a position paper of the Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists. When they did that, coronavirus, they popped you to Part 1 of death certificates, when by the 2003 guidelines would have been typically put you in Part 2. So these authors here promoted Mr. Coronavirus. Thanks to these guidelines, those chronic comorbidities usually in Part 1 would slide into Part 2. This change in reporting made you look like the 1918 flu pandemic and created more fear in the populace. You see what she's saying here? You know, they changed the categorization so that what had been the top category is comorbidity, and the virus as the second category, they reversed those, giving them a much higher count for coronavirus. Just exactly like my comment here about the poor soul who was dead on arrival at GMH from a heart attack. Well, yeah, but, he tested positive, so that's a Wuhan virus, for sure. The Wuhan virus that killed him, yeah. Going on with Helen's column, it also wasn't your fault, coronavirus, that between May 21 and July 31, 18,135 people entering Guam, mostly residents, were jailed at public expense in 4 hotels. They were locked up. 18,135 people? Wow.
That's huge.
It is. That's more people than live in Homatak.
That's 1 month.
Yeah. Between May 21, July 31.
3 months, 2 months, 3 months.
18,135 people entering Guam. Mostly residents were jailed at public expense in 4 hotels. They were locked up without due process of law and confined to their rooms without as much as an hour of fresh air, according to DOC inmates. Their crime? They visited the continental U.S., put their toes in, quote, high-risk states, and then dared to come home. What would Greta Thunberg say about that? How dare you? Why all that fuss, coronavirus? Because we've now found 20 or so positive tests among all those returning residents. That works out to less than 0.11% positive tests among those returning, figuring some cases happened outside the time frame above. It's also not your fault, coronavirus, that schools have been disrupted. Public church services have been suspended. Long-time businesses have closed. And the economy is making a deep dive into the trench. Or that healthy people and little children are being locked up yet again to stop you. These are all decisions of men and women who are using you, coronavirus, to foment fear and control the rest of us. Frankly, coronavirus, if I were you, I'd leave. I'd get out of town while the getting's good, and the sooner the better. Signed, a tired mom of 3 disabled kids who are tired of missing school. What a great piece of work. Very well done.
There was only one error.
Uh-huh.
It should have been the initials WV.
Yeah, I know, but I suppose Helen is, inclusivity is so important now, right?
She did say men and women and not they.
She did that too?
They made decisions.
Okay.
No, men and women made decisions.
Yeah.
Bravo.
So perhaps in the spirit of inclusivity, Helen figured, I'm going to write this for people who are that small minority of people on the island who are not part of the Tall Tales International radio listening audience, who don't understand Tall Tales vocabulary. So we'll give her a pass on that. It's a great editorial. And then we got another one from Lee Weber. And Lee Weber's column poses a question. What possible loss of freedoms will be next? Which one are they going to take away from us now? Lee says, no clear thinking person can honestly believe that this virus can be dealt with by home lockdowns, small business closures, and similar behavior. I'm a clear thinking person, and I go along with what he says. Good leadership would have by this time been working to crack down on the critical sources of the spread. It's no secret that incoming travelers, family gatherings, like what do we say, conclusions do we draw when a mother and her son come down with virus? Yeah. Just a coincidence, I'm sure.
Just a coincidence.
Yeah. Yeah, I suspect that the vectors were completely different, that one of them got it from someone in Humatic and the other one got it from someone in Jigo, no doubt. Yeah. Lee says it's no secret that incoming travelers, family gatherings, funerals, gambling, some other indoor gatherings that do not afford social distancing, as well as drinking establishments, are primary sources of the flare-ups. However, short of the incoming travelers, clamping down on all the other activities will very likely garner any politician the votes they need to get reelected. This added to the fact that, as Dr. Thomas Shea has said, follow the 3 W's: wear a mask, watch our distance, watch our hands, and support Black Lives Matter. Well, that's more than 3. Yeah. Too many people continually fail to follow simple mask distancing and hand washing guidelines that only complicates the entire issue. A strong educational campaign coupled with better and more stringent controls would go much further to ensure our medical system does not get overwhelmed. Doing this until there is a viable medical treatment for the virus or we achieve herd immunity. Neither the governor nor this do-nothing legislature has come up with a viable plan to flatten this outbreak and keep it that way while simultaneously not crippling the island's economy any more than it has to be crippled already. The latest extremely abrupt round of business closures that prompted the ensuing necessary layoff of more workers in the private sector of this economy has the vast majority of small, unessential in the governor's eyes, business owners wondering what possible loss of freedoms will be next. I probably shouldn't say this, but, you know, the governor could conceivably quarantine everybody on island to every person on island to their home. Yeah. Okay, let's take a break on that one.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So there we are, short break. I was peeking at Facebook during the break here. Andrew Camacho comes up with a hypothetical that fits in exactly with what Helen Middlebrook and I talked about. Here it is. A man goes to Two Lovers Point, drinks a bottle of poison, jumps off the cliff, and gets chewed up by sharks. Rescuers recover the man's nose, which gets swabbed and tests positive. Another victim of the Wuhan virus. It's a good thing they were able to recover his nose, or we wouldn't be able to add that to the count. Good call, Andrew. Okay, so here we are. So Lee wonders what possible loss of freedoms will be next. All the while, this governor continues to allow Government of Guam workers to supposedly work from home while drawing their normal and at times additionally inflated government wages. I think one of the things that the governor workers that who are allowed to work from home are required to do at least once an hour during the time that they're at home on the payroll. At least once an hour, they're supposed to say, with a very solemn look on their faces, "We're all in this together. We're all in this together." Given the reality that there are around 11,000 Government of Guam workers getting paid and somewhere between 30 and 40,000 private sector workers, the majority of whom currently remain unemployed, it makes these moves economically and psychologically disruptive for this larger group of residents. This is simply not the way to be dealing with this virus, considering this has now seriously affected small businesses and resulted in certain business closures. Additionally, how many of the deaths to date have really been the result of Wuhan virus as opposed to the accumulation of comorbidity issues, thank you, Helen Middlebrook, with Wuhan virus, such as serious flu being the last straw that led to the patient's death? To me, all these actions are little more than scare tactics that politicians believe will help them keep people in line with their ill-conceived train of thought and efforts to maintain control. My friend Ray Gibson sent me a note. Ray Gibson, we know Ray Gibson, right, Jose?
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, he has a top-notch radio talk show. Comes on at 6 a.m. In fact, I heard this advertisement on The Point. I've heard it more than once. It goes like this. Ray says, set your dial to 93.3. You needn't touch it again. Yeah. My friend Ray Gibson sent me a note and asked that I share it with others. So here it goes. There are roughly 35,000 unemployed and underemployed voters. It takes 18,693 signatures to recall the governor and only 7,000 to recall the speaker. I suppose his intent was to stir the pot for his radio show recently. Well, if that was Ray's intent, we will continue to stir it right here on Tall Tales. I don't think you've got a sound effect for stirring, do you, Jose?
No stirring, but he did confirm he was guilty as charged.
Guilty as charged. Okay, well, I'm going to be a co-defendant then. All right. It very likely will have the capability of doing so. I only recall one other attempted gubernatorial recall effort since I've been on the island. That said, it's certainly not beyond the realm of possibility if this type of behavior on the part of the government is continued. Good calls, Lee. I remember 2 attempted recalls, neither of which relied on the mechanism of citizens' petitions. Well, wait a minute. The first one did, but they weren't able to gather enough signatures to make the petition fly. I do remember that, yeah.
Is that the only requirement for recall, is to gather enough signatures, or does somebody have to determine whether it's valid or not?
Well, good that you asked that, because as luck would have it, I have the legal research right here in my hand, Jose. The Organic Act at 48 U.S.C. Section 1422 A says this: 1, the people of Guam shall have the right, as you were, any governor, lieutenant governor, or member of the legislature of Guam may be removed from office by a referendum election in which at least 2/3 of the number of persons voting for such official in the last preceding general election at which such official was elected vote in favor of recall, and in which those so voting constitute a majority of all those participating in such referendum election. So, vote. Yeah, people get to vote on it, right? And the necessary number of voters, you got to have it's a supermajority. 2/3 of those who vote have to vote in favor of recall. How is the referendum election kicked off? I'll be with you in just a minute here, Carl. I want to finish this about recall. I've got the most dangerous man in the room. Our Carl on the line. Now, I hate to keep our Carl waiting because there's no telling what kinds of missions he's on right now, but I want to finish up this part about recall. The referendum election shall be initiated by the legislature of Guam following one, a two-thirds vote of members of the legislature in favor of a referendum, or B, a petition for such referendum to the legislature by registered voters equal in number to at least 50% of the whole number of votes cast at the last general election at which such official was elected preceding the following of the petition. So that's what the Organic Act says. So 2/3 of the members of the legislature could vote. We're going to instruct the election commission to hold this vote. Or the other alternative is that 50% of the people that voted in the last election come forward with having signed a petition, and then the election commission would have to go forward with it. Now, there's a kind of a catch-22 here, and it goes to the matter that James raised on Friday. You remember R. James called and told us of a rather sad experience that he had when he called the election commission to ask for the packet that dealt with recall, and and he had a couple of questions, but the person who answered the phone at the election commission said, "I will not tell you anything until you tell me your full name." So there's a way to deal with that, but maybe I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Well, here's the bitter truth. We have a local statute dealing with recall, because you would think the Organic Act lays out the right, and you would think that there would be a local statute that says this is how you go about enforcing the right that the Organic Act provides for you. Here's what we have. We have 3 GCA 1121, and it says mayors, vice mayors, CCU members, Guam Education Board members, the Attorney General, and the public auditor may be removed from office by a recall election in which at least 2/3 of the number of people voting in the last election vote in favor of recall. Interesting. So we don't have a local statute that speaks to the recall of senators or governor or lieutenant governor, only lesser officials. So that raises an interesting question. Well, actually, it provides an interesting answer to James's question. Perhaps the person that he talked to at the election commission didn't want to talk to him because there's no answer. They have not contemplated. There is no recall packet. So in order for someone to start that petition, he would have to put together, it would be a typing exercise. You put together your own petition. Wouldn't be that hard. Take the petition that we use for election to for senator, follow that basic format, quote the statute on the top, etc., and you could go with it. It would be just a typing exercise to do it. But until something like that happens, it seems like, or the other alternative, until one senator puts together a resolution to end the governor's magic powers, the governor's not going to take our complaints out here in the peanut gallery very seriously. Now, the way things work in the political world, if a petition for recall were seriously started, the mere fact that the petition were started would have an effect on the behavior of the governor and of the speaker and whoever else you're trying to recall. And the same thing in the legislature. If one senator puts together a resolution that says the governor has overreacted and abused the authority given her by Chapter 19 of Title 10, therefore, in accordance with section blah, 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 we are ending her authority. The mere fact that that resolution had been drafted and introduced and was being circulated would have an effect on her behavior. But as the Post editorial says, nobody over there at the legislature very much interested in this. Jim Moylan is interested to the point that he's looking for pen pals. Right. I don't know if anybody knows what pen pals are anymore. Do you, Jose? Did people have pen pals when you were a kid?
We had pen pals. We did not have the internet.
Yeah. So for the benefit of our younger listeners, back in the time when I was growing up, it was cool to have a pen pal, especially someone who lived far away from you. So if you lived in Wisconsin and you had a pen pal in California, that was really neat. So with your pen pal, you just write letters back and forth and, kind of develop a friendship by that archaic instrument known as the United States mail. Some people even had pen pals in foreign countries. But then, of course, you had to pay the money for a stamp to send it overseas. So that's what a pen pal was.
Nowadays, a pen pal is someone you're quarantined with.
Right. So Jim Moylan apparently is nostalgic for pen pals because instead of introducing dynamic bills or resolutions like the one I mentioned, he's writing letters almost on a day. Well, not every day, because he took time out to introduce his identity politics hate crime bill and accrued the name of the middle initial of W to his name. Therefore, he's now James Woke Moylan. But it's the kind of thing that a backbench sharpshooter from the Republicans ought to do. Put that resolution together. Get your fellow party members to sign it. Introduce it. Okay, well, let me see what what wisdom our Carl is going to impart. That is, if he's not tied up in the middle of a huge secret operation. Are you, Carl?
Oh, my whole life is a secret operation.
Yeah, I know you can't talk about it.
I can't talk about it.
If you did, you'd have to kill us, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the biggest disappointments is the lack of reaction from not even a single senator on this. The closing of the beaches and the parks, where if law-abiding citizens want to take their spouse or their children, go to the beach and just get out in the sun, get some fresh air, toss a Frisbee around, they actually risk going to jail or getting fined $1,000. I mean, if there is ever a ripe opportunity to differentiate yourself from the crowd, this is just pure gold. And to see no one grab for it is just, it's very disappointing. I had such high hopes, especially for Jim Moylan. So to see the lack of reaction is just, it's just really so sad. But, what would really cap this off if she decided to do a repeat performance of the Roadblocks? That would really stir public annoyance and irritation with this.
She said that if necessary, she'll do it again. She's quoted on that in the press.
Well, I find the same mindset as we see in Governor Cuomo, in New York State. He's quoted as saying, in the press that because the virus has, that New York has stumbled through to the point where the virus is actually reaching herd immunity, and what do you call this? He actually had a policy that forced thousands of elderly into elder care homes, which resulted. Now the estimates have gone from 6,000 killed because of this policy to over 11,000. And he's actually gone in front of the press with a straight face and said that they've overcome the virus, and it's a beautiful thing. I remember that phrase. It's a beautiful thing. So no matter what happens, you know, the political class tends to, if it goes wrong, well, it's the public's fault. You know, in our case, if it went wrong, well, the public didn't do enough of what we told them to do. But if it goes right, you know, it's all the credit and none of the blame. So it doesn't matter. We're playing Simon Says politics, and as long as we, you know, jump as the virus does what the virus does and rolls through the population and slowly reaches herd immunity and dies out, the political class is going to take full credit for all of that. And it's just sad that not a single senator is willing to stand up and say this is really going too far. You know, this beach closing and the park closing. And I went to Kmart recently, you know, at night, and it was a ghost town, almost. And large sections of it were roped off. The clothing section, I might have mentioned, you know, in past calls, closed off. I don't see what that has to do with the virus.
Well, if that section were open, Carl, maybe Kmart could sell some clothes and perhaps bring in some revenue. That wouldn't be fair, would it?
Yeah, it's. I guess maybe that's the way they look at it. You know, maybe it's their way of killing off capitalism. I have no idea what the logic is behind this.
We're all in this together. That's the mantra. We're all in this together.
Wasn't somebody caught running down Marine Drive without any clothes?
Yes, and I'm surprised that Lou hasn't presented that person with some sort of certificate for really complying with all of her rules. The
Certificates have been roped off, sir.
Yeah, because you know, probably the lady didn't have any more clean clothes. She didn't want to go to the laundry. She couldn't go to the store to buy anything else, so what else could she do? Complete compliance with the rules.
Yeah, thanks to this performance, you know, it started with a minimum wage issue, and then there's this and other issues that I thought were great opportunities to differentiate, for one senator or two to differentiate and actually make a strong case for some common sense. I'm not going to vote for any incumbent senators. I was kind of holding out for Senator Moylan, but he lost my support with that identity politics bill. I just threw up my hands. You know, we've got a hospital that is falling apart, schools and the school system that desperately needs work, prison that needs work. And one last thing that occurred to me, I think it was this morning. We have a growing elder care crisis. I have a friend of mine who's mid-80s. She is becoming weaker and weaker. Her husband is also mid-80s. He is completely blind, and his mind is going. Her only son died, and there's no place for people like that to turn. I took care of my mother for 6 years. The last 3 years, she was incontinent and couldn't use her legs. Fortunately, you know, she had someone that could help her, but it occurred to me how many people are out there, senior citizens, that have no help at all. They're laying there, lying in their urine and their feces, and there's no one to turn to. We have no elder care hope.
You know, Carl, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have been so concerned about that, but now it seems like a serious problem. Music playing in the background, Carl. We gotta say goodbye.
All right, thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay, Carl.
Bye-bye.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. To live with been our friends and never we have known. Now we're banking on the future. More services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place rules. Viva! Bank Pacific!
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Okay, so we had our first phone call here from the most dangerous man in the room, also known as our Carl, commenting on what our governor has been doing. Has she been doing these things for us or to us? I think to us. So it's Blue Star time. And I should have checked to make sure I had enough blue ink in my pen because today the Blue Star is going to get exercised. First of all, the editorial that the Post ran was very well done, as usual. A Blue Star for the Post. And although he's a regular columnist in the Post, his offerings have never attracted the kind of Tall Tales attention that would put him in the running for a Blue Star. But congratulations, Lee Weber. You are now a member of that select group who have received the Blue Star. Now, Helen is no stranger to the Blue Star. She's knocked down a couple of them before. But, Helen, I got to tell you that this one that you did today, your letter to Dear Coronavirus, that was a classic. And the only criticism I have about your letter, Helen, I'm a little bit envious. It's exactly the same kind of stuff I like to do, a little sarcasm, some facetiousness. Yeah. But I don't think I've ever been as artful at doing it as you were. So congratulations, Helen Middlebrook. All right. So took us almost a half the show to get through Jimmy Cutney, but it was worth it. We had some pretty good stuff in there. Next, we go to the card. We'll get started on the card before that big halftime show. And this is what I've got in the card. We start out with Tina Rose Muñoz versus Emergency. Tina had gotten up to, I think, 48 days without detecting an emergency that would require her to call the legislature into an emergency session. Well, that all ended today. She's calling the legislature into session on Thursday, I believe it is, to act on her bill. Now, the last time this happened, she called the legislature into session to act on her bill, which had not had a public hearing. So she exercised her authority as a speaker to waive the public hearing requirement. The fact that it was her bill, I think that was just coincidental. That really didn't weigh in her decision-making process. But history, as Jack is so fond of saying, by the way, Jack triumphed on Sunday. I mentioned this to Ray this morning, that we went to Mass at Dadido Church, and we were all sitting out in our cars listening to the loudspeaker. But when it came time for communion, we had a drive-through communion. So you had the priest and a deacon or lector or whatever on either side of the lane, and as you pulled up, you rolled your window down, and they presented the host to you in your car. So, Jack, you've really had an impact here. You know, that we used to think that a drive-through was just a place to get something to eat, but you've really educated the populace on that. Okay, big halftime break, or halftime show here. We'll come back to the card after that.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Bracing for the worst. Fox News, I'm Mary Corsetti. Two tropical storms making their way through the Gulf Coast and into the U.S. Marco expected to hit Louisiana Monday, and Laura predicted to advance into a Category 2 hurricane when it lands on the same stretch of the U.S. coast later in the week.
Marco probably will impact the area through Monday night. Listen to the advice of the local emergency management officials in those areas, and that includes even places like Cuba where they're also being impacted here, but certainly along the U.S. northern Gulf Coast.
Richard Pash with the National Hurricane Center. Plus, 3 Maryland police officers were shot while responding to a reported home invasion Sunday in Hyattsville.
Within minutes, they arrived on the scene, and within seconds, they came under gunfire. They were ambushed. 3 of those officers were shot, all sustaining various degrees of injuries.
Prince George's County Interim Police Chief Hector Velez says the officers were hospitalized and doing well. 2 suspects were taken into custody. This as police in Kentucky say 1 of 3 people who were shot Sunday inside the Fayette Mall has died. Police also said the suspect and at least 1 of the victims may have known each other. Meanwhile, the Republican National Convention will begin Monday. Fox's Lucas Tomlinson has a preview of the speakers voters will hear from during the week.
Here's the rough plans for the convention on Monday. Senator Tim Scott and House GOP Whip Steve Scalise will be speaking. On Tuesday, First Lady Melania Trump and Secretary of State Pompeo will speak. On Wednesday, Vice President Mike Pence will deliver his remarks from Fort McHenry, the national monument in Baltimore made famous during the War of 1812 that inspired Francis Scott Key to write the Star-Spangled Banner. And Thursday, President Trump will speak in the keynote address. The 4th time this week he will appear.
And although originally scheduled for Charlotte and then briefly moved to Jacksonville, the convention will be a mostly virtual affair. President Trump will formally accept the Republican nomination Thursday from the South Lawn of the White House. America is listening to Fox News.
Pick up dinner for you and the family at Chili's. We got you covered with a variety of delicious family platter options, like our fajita trio, Cajun chicken pasta, or our crispy chicken crispers. Or order off our new menu for you and a friend and indulge in our tasty burgers, tacos, and ribs. Get your Chili's favorites in a way that works for you. Call 648-7377 or WhatsApp 929-7376 for curbside pickup orders. Or get delivery with Good to Go. Chili's, you can still savor the moments at home.
Well, one of President Trump's longest-serving advisors, Kellyanne Conway, says she will be leaving the White House at the end of the month. Conway was Trump's campaign manager during the 2016 race, and she was the first woman to successfully steer a White House bid. She then became a senior counselor to the president. Conway cites a need to spend time with her 4 children and a resignation letter she posted Sunday night. Plus, a group of survivors from a 2018 high school massacre is hitting the road to help register young voters.
Survivors from the 2018 mass shooting at Parkland's Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School are visiting 9 states, including Arizona, Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Georgia, starting Monday, hoping to motivate and engage the sometimes elusive youth vote and promote voter registration. The March for Our Lives group, founded by David Hogg, Emma Gonzalez, and others, will use on-the-ground art exhibits paralleling digital rallies aimed at issues like gun violence, racial injustice, and immigration. The 2018 Valentine's Day shooting at the Florida school left 17 dead.
Fox's Paul Stevens. Also new tonight, some colleges across the nation have gone to all online learning after COVID-19 cases spike on campus. This as other schools are reconsidering their on-campus plans.
Schools such as Notre Dame and UNC Chapel Hill have shut down in-class learning, but others like the University of Arizona in Tucson are still welcoming students this week. That school's president, Robert Robbins, told CBS Face the Nation he feels they can contain spread on campus, but they must do what other institutions have done.
Gone aggressively off campus to try to break up large gatherings and parties.
Robbins says students who ignore safety protocols will be subject to expulsion. He added rises in cases with no capacity to care for them will force a shutdown.
Fox's Grenache Scott. I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Woo-wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Well, another terrific halftime show here on Tall Tales. I suppose that'll be the next thing that Governor Lilian Guerrero will do. She'll issue an executive order banning the halftime show on Tall Tales because people enjoy it. That seems to be the key. We have to have a society here where no enjoyment is permitted. Nothing that would be anything like, I hate to use the word, but fun.
Denied.
Exactly. Yeah, no movies. All right, so the card. Here's what I got on the card. As I mentioned before, Tina is back to zero because she's calling the legislature back special session again and will no doubt waive the public hearing requirement on her own bill, which I'll get to in a second on the card. And then we have the Calvary Chapel versus Governor Liu. And when we get to that point, I would like everyone out there in the international radio listening audience to give the Calvary Chapel a big hand, especially practicing Catholics, because it's good to see that someone takes, a person takes their faith seriously enough to actually act on it instead of looking for places to hide and cover. I've got Lou versus Freedom. Unfortunately, this is only a 2-hour show, so I won't be able to cover it all. Yeah. And then Pam versus Alarmism, which was on the card a couple days ago, but Pam checked out early, and I wanted to save it for her. I hope we can link up on that one. Ken versus Personnel Matters. This is the other Governor Leon Guerrero, which has been on for a while. Troy versus Lou, Trump versus Biden. Lee Weber versus Scofflaws, which is his column for last week. So it just shows that I have made a whole lot of progress going through the calendar here. And then Michael Bavacqua is on the calendar. He really threw me a curve. He wrote a column that I actually agreed with. Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but maybe this is part of a sinister plot. Okay, so Tina.
Have you been tested for COVID, sir?
I have, yeah.
I'm just concerned.
Yeah, okay. That was a long time ago, though. Okay, so I've been keeping track of Tina calling special sessions and waiving public hearing requirements. It's part of the read-in to the show, and as I mentioned, she's back to zero again. There's a story in the Daily News. Speaker Tina Munya Barnes, cancel primary election, allow for mail-in voting. Well, I think we've been through this once before, haven't we? We were going to cancel the primary election, but the story goes like this. The Election Commission last month stated it could hold the 2020 primary, but due to Guam being placed under a stay-home order and POS Condition 1 recently told the legislature it is no longer able to carry out an election without putting the lives of thousands of residents at risk, according to a news release from the Speaker's office. In order to keep our healthcare facilities from reaching their breaking point, and by the way, we ordinarily don't need a pandemic to have our healthcare facilities reach the breaking point. And to ensure the safety of our residents as well as election personnel, we must take action to ensure that safeguards are put in place, Munya Barnes said in a press release. We need to be proactive so that in the general election, residents can feel safe exercising their right to vote, and that's why I included a mail-in provision in this measure. Upon the directive of the Department of Public Health and Social Service and the advice of counsel, well, that makes it really, really bulletproof. The legislature has been directed not to resume meeting in person until August 27, the release stated. Due to an Organic Act provision, the legislature can't take action on matters virtually. Well, it's good to see that somebody pays attention to the law. But this is what Tina said. she got a direction from the Department of Public Health and Social Service that they can't have a meeting until August 27. That's not the law, Tina. Nobody can tell you when to have a meeting and when not to have a meeting. It's this kind of strange concept called separation of powers. Maybe you've heard of it. So the director of public health, the former director, Commissar DeNorcy, could tell the churches that they couldn't have sacramental services, but nobody can tell you you can't have a session. But that's exactly what Tina says. And she also got advice from legal counsel. And, if you're going to do that, you should tell us what counsel said, not, well, the lawyer said. That's kind of like, I'd really like to help you, but, my mom said I couldn't do it. What'd your mom say? Well, I can't tell you because it was just between me and my mom. Okay, our Carl is back for another ride on the Ferris wheel. Wow. The most dangerous man in the room is back on the Ferris wheel. Hello, Carl.
Hey, Bob. That was a very good point you made about that we don't normally need a pandemic to reach the breaking point of our hospital system. I think it's been there for a while. But one thing I wanted to ask you, actually in the first call, but I got kind of sidetracked, is what about this peaceful protest that's supposed to go on tomorrow? I know in the First Amendment it talks about Congress shall make no law regarding, one of the things it says is the right of the people to peacefully assemble. Does a governor's right in any of the states or the territories overrule that? I mean, can they at some point say, no, you don't have the right to peaceably assemble? How does that work?
Well, Carl, whenever someone mentions the Constitution, it's my habit to grab for my old beat-up copy of the Constitution here and not try to speak from memory. So this is what the First Amendment of the United States Congress says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances unless the governor of Guam by executive order prohibits such assemblies.
Wow, I missed that part.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe this is an old version or something like that. It's probably the official version that the governor uses. Well, the law on peaceful assembly is this. A state or a city that has legislative authority can require that if you're going to have an assembly in a public area, like on a street or a park or something, that you have a parade permit, but the parade permit can only speak to time, place, and manner. It cannot get into the content of your protest. We don't have such a statute. So as long as we do Republican protests instead of Democrat protests, I think we're probably okay. The difference being that a Democrat protest involves things like Molotov cocktails, arson, burglary, riots, and looting. But when a Democrat newspaper covers it, the words mostly peaceful have to be included in any report. So as long as we don't have any of those things, yeah, people can demonstrate. They can't stop traffic. They can't obstruct the sidewalk so that no one can walk by. But they can get out there with signs that say, recall Lou. Or the pandemic is bad, but Lou is worse. Right? Something like that. Yeah, there wouldn't be any way that the government can constitutionally, that is legally, impact on that peaceful assembly.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering how that worked, between states' rights and Congress shall make no law. I wasn't quite clear on that.
Well, there is an interesting piece of information there. The First Amendment says Congress. And the reason for that is that the amendments, as you probably knew, were to protect the people and the states from the national government. So the Bill of Rights did not impact on the states at all until the Supreme Court, acting as a super legislature, came up with in a case called Gitlow versus New York, something called selective incorporation. And what they found was that when the 14th Amendment was added to the Constitution, the idea was that it selectively incorporated some of the Bill of Rights. So that's why, although the First Amendment says Congress, it also goes to mayors and governors and state legislatures, and et cetera. But before Gitlow versus New York, a state could make a law respecting the establishment of religion. Massachusetts had an established religion up until 1820. So you asked me what time it was, I told you how to build a great big clock, Carl.
Well, you're a fountain of constitutional knowledge, Bob. I appreciate it. It's clear now. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so that's a story here, and Senator Kelly Marsh Titano actually said something that is a little different from her usual environmental wacko separatist rap that we're so used to. She said, with the governor and legislature now on the verge of acting to cancel the primary election, important questions have been raised concerning the rights of 2,284 voters who have already cast ballots at the GEC office. This constitutes 12 to 14% of the anticipated primary election voter turnout. This total can increase with absentee ballots coming in the mail. Canceling the 2020 primary election after their ballots are now in the custody of GEC raises the question of disenfranchisement. Wow, there's a two-bit word for you. Disenfranchisement of citizens who have already exercised their right to vote. Marsh specifically asked Camacho, that's the Attorney General. Now, they have their own lawyer over there. It's called a legislative council. And if I were the Attorney General, perish the thought, when they ask me a question, I'd write back and say, you got your own lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. Ask legislative council. But anyhow, this is what they want the Attorney General to weigh in on, which is stupid. Why would you ask a lawyer from outside your body to give you legal advice? That would be like me asking my neighbor's lawyer for advice. But this is what they want to find out. If the primary election has technically already begun. That's a good question. If it has begun, who possesses the authority to cancel it and how? If any federal laws are at risk of violation, and what happens to the ballots already cast? And then Titano closes by saying, the last thing anyone wants is to open up the election to legal challenges later on. Well, you know, even a broken clock tells the correct time twice a day.
I was actually impressed with those questions.
Yeah.
It's very brave and courageous of her. But I would say it hasn't technically started. It has absolutely started the election process.
Well, it does present an interesting set of legal questions. Does putting a ballot in the ballot box give you something that looks like a tangible right to know the outcome of that election? I haven't researched it. I haven't even done a significant amount of head scratching on it, but my initial reaction is yes. Yeah, that once you've put a ballot in the ballot box, I don't know if the word right is quite the way to describe it. Certainly an expectancy that your vote is going to be counted, right? And then actually the election has begun. It's not just technically begun, it has begun because people have been voting. It's kind of like, when you impanel the jury, jeopardy attaches. So we've told people, we have a ballot here. Here are the people you can vote for. Here's how you vote. Come down here, fill it out, put it in the box. When that first ballot went in the box, the election has begun. So I think an important distinction has to be made between canceling an election and what's the word I'm looking for here? Because we're not canceling the election.
Prolonging it?
We're not prolonging it. We're interrupting it. We're interdicting it. Right?
Manipulating it?
Derailing it.
Derailing it.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Invalidating it. Yeah, so it's a much harder question to answer than does the legislature have the ability to cancel an election? And even that, there's some stickers there. This is a much harder question to answer. Can the legislature invalidate an election that has already begun? And when I was talking with Ray on the radio this morning, the concepts involved here are very similar to the concept involved with Jim Moylan's bill to cancel the election. If we had the conversation about canceling the election because of the Wuhan virus a month before the election, I probably would have come down on it differently. Maybe even 2 weeks, maybe even a week. But once you know who's running, you can't cancel the election unless you want to have conversations like, well, if we're going to cancel a primary, does that favor Underwood? I think it favors Underwood. No, I think it favors Mike San Nicolas. Well, what about Will Castro? Should never be having these kinds of conversations. A conversation based on who benefits from a change in the law. And it's unavoidable. So we had when the first time we went through this, we knew who was running. The ballots were already printed. And then we decide, no, we don't want to have an election. So the legislature did the right thing. They said, no, we're going to go forward with it. I think that the considerations here are exactly the same. And of course, whenever you have these hypothetical conversations about the impact that changing the law will have, you have to hang on tight or you start sliding down that slippery slope. And the hypothetical that I presented to Ray this morning on the Ray Gibson Show is this. Let's say that there are two candidates for office, and one of the candidates' strategy is, if we get out the vote, if a lot of people go to the polls, our candidate's got a good chance. If the turnout is small, our candidate doesn't have a good chance. So you'd have the early voting, and one or the other two occurs. Either there's you judge it as a good turnout or a poor turnout, and because of that, you say, we're not going to win, so we're going to cancel it. You can't do that. The elections are the most important thing we do in a democratic society. So that's exactly what the election commission should not have talked about canceling the election. That's not their function. And Tina, of course, is playing to form, true to form, by canceling the election. and she's got a bill here that I have to also tear apart. But first of all, I want to get Frenchie's insight on this. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Good afternoon, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing great, Frenchie.
Good. Yeah. Well, you're right on target there with that argument, and it was quite amazing. This morning on Ray's show, I think after you call, there was McNitch, who is the biggest apologist of not having a primary election, who basically came up with all the reason why we shouldn't have a primary. But he had no answer when Ray asked him that exact question. How about the people that have already voted? You know, on a good election, that's almost 10% of the...
Hey, Frenchie. Frenchie,
yeah, go ahead.
My bad. I should have taken the break and put you on afterward. Can you hang on till after the break?
Absolutely, no problem.
Thank you, Frenchie.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile Team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile Team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
So here we are at seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field in Chicago. Frenchie and I were watching the game, watching the non-game actually, and Frenchie was telling me about Ron McNitch's comments on the Ray Gibson Show. Go ahead, Frenchie.
Yeah, so, and you know, there's one thing he could not answer was when Ray asked him, what are we doing with the people that already voted? And then not long after, Jim Woke-Moreland called in to explain that even though he was against holding the primary back in July, I believe, or was I think it was July, right, when they did their hearing, that now that it has started, we should not cancel it, which is, you know, common sense, but it doesn't sound like this administration or this legislature has any, you know. So that, you know, maybe we can postpone it if they think that the health environment is not conducive to holding it, but we cannot cancel it. It's, you know, what started is started. But this administration from the get-go of this crisis is drunk on power. You know, they lifted all the requirements for the government to have open hearing and give justification of their actions, and they are drunk on power. They are going totally nuts. When I read this morning open letter from the governor, I had to double-check twice if he was the governor of Guam or some kind of banana republic at the end of the Pacific. It's like amazingly brazen and totally ill-advised, especially in the view that the same government didn't say anything at all. On the contrary, they kind of encourage people for free expression when BLM decided to do their demonstration while we were still under lockdown at the end of May. So, and the church had not reopened and everything, but BLM was able to go and demonstrate not once, not twice, but 4 times. And the governor's daughter led the demonstration for white coats for Black Lives Matters. You know, so what is those two different set of value when you have certain items that are good to talk about and others that are taboo. And you know, now you have Three Chins Munya Barn trying to sound like she's protecting democracy while she's squashing it. Those people are very dangerous. Number one, because they don't know what the heck they're doing, and number two, because they're willing to do anything to silence the opposition. And I think your analysis that basically because they don't like the beginning of the results from the early voting is very true, because this is exactly what they did in 2018 when Guterres ran against Agun in order to facilitate for the governor to be elected. And it was just about 800 votes, if I remember, on the primary, right? And which led Agun to be very upset and run as a write-in. But it's amazing. And at that time, if you remember, in 18, it was the lowest turnout in many years, because they knew they needed a low turnout in order to be elected. If people had turned out, Lou would not been elected. So they're playing those tricks on people. They are fear-mongering, because so far on all what they have shown us, we don't have a pandemic. We're still below 1% death rate compared to positive. And, you know, governing is anticipating. Why did they not anticipate that we would have a push of positive case when they started increasing testing? They still don't have a valid explanation of what it is, and they communicate very little. No wonder that Janela is now the official communicator for DPHSS. So I don't know. This is the string is so big that it is amazing. And then they ask GovGuam employee to vote on those post survey. I don't know how many times they voted, and then we have 2/3 of people are in for the lockdown, which, you know, if you believe this, I have a steel tower to sell you in Paris. It's just amazing. They're willing to do anything, and to me, this is very scary. You know, when you read the arguments of the governor in that open letter, I dare her to come up with such weak arguments, especially in the view of what she did in May. It goes opposite to what she did in May.
She doesn't anticipate. She's impulsive. And as you say, the power has gone to her head.
Yeah. And so we need 8 senators to say, hey, enough is enough. But I don't think those senators understand how upset people are, and that they are not going to get reelected if they don't act. They keep doing the same thing, which is giving her open power and continue to abuse the people of Guam. So I don't know. Hopefully they have a good turnout tomorrow at the thing. I know a lot of people that are older are not going to be able to go too much in the sun, but we'll see. We'll see how many people show up.
You know, Frenchie, I was struggling to find a good word to describe what Tina and Lou want to do with the election, because they're not canceling it. The election has started, and now they're coming in to end it after it started. And the word finally occurred to me. It's so appropriate. Aborted.
You know what?
Lou wants to abort the election.
You are so much on target, it's scary. But, you know, the Marines have been known to have good aim.
Very true, Fetchy, very true.
All right.
Well, thank
you, Bob.
Thanks for sharing your insights. And I had Frenchie, and I'm going to go from Frenchie right to our Fred. Good afternoon, our Fred.
Good afternoon. Well, just echoing what the others are saying. You know, on the election, it's just like any competition, any basketball game or track meet or football game. Whoever shows up on the day of whichever team, if you don't show up, you lose by default. The date of the game is set, just like the date of the primary is set. And that's it. Whoever shows up and votes, we have about 2,000 some that have already voted by at the moment. And then those who show up, and whatever the outcome is, that's what it is. You can't cancel it. It's a competition day. And whatever the circumstances, like it goes rain or shine, you show up, and whatever happens, happens. And the other argument, which everyone has been saying, is that just like the grocery stores are open, people are standing 6 feet apart and so forth. What harm is it if there's an election and everyone practices social distancing, wearing a mask, and so forth? Sanitizers will be there. So I don't see why, if we can go grocery shopping or go to Home Depot or Kmart, why we can't go to the polls and exercise our right as U.S. citizens to vote. And to cancel it is the writings on the wall, is to move the direction of the vote for certain people's advantage, and that's what's going on. So if anyone decides to cancel it, that's not what the people want. The majority want to vote, and they've voted, and the elected representatives, as I call them, not leaders, representatives, have to hear the people's voice, because it's by the people, for the people, of the people, which we got to remind every citizen about that. So voting has to happen. You can postpone it, sure, but can't cancel the primary. And if Jim Moylan wants to cancel it, or I think he wants to postpone it, or anyone wants to cancel it, they don't have the right to. The people have the right to cancel it, not our elected representatives. That's one point. Secondly, like you said, our constitutional right to protest is there, and that can't be taken away by any executive order. And another point is that why do people whose tummies are full get to decide on the rest of the people? It's such a weird, odd decision. People who are getting paid are deciding for the rest who are not, who have to put their hand out to get PUA benefits.
But Fred, the people that are getting paid every day, they say several times, we're all in this together.
You're right, and I want to rephrase that. It's they are in it together.
Yeah.
They.
Right, Fred.
Not we. We are not part of that equation.
No.
They are in it together.
For once, I know what the word "they" means.
now we have a new definition for it.
Yeah.
They are in it together, and they are trying to decide while their tummies are full for everyone else. And they don't get it that it's governing for the people, by the people, of the people. And it's what the people want that goes, not what they want.
True enough, Fred.
So if you can echo that, and I hope the people of Guam understand it's what the people want, not what they want. They simply just represent us. That's it, yeah. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, Fred, always good. Our Fred, it's always good talking to our Fred. So, I came up with a word. You know, we had a bill to cancel the election after we knew who was running and after the ballots had already been printed. But once that first voter stuck that ballot in the box, the election has started. So if we're going to do anything to it now and not allow it to run its normal course, we would be aborting the election. And of course, who better to abort an election but Governor Leon Guerrero, who, as our friend Jose pointed out way back not long after Inauguration Day, when we were marveling over the fact that we had our first our first female majority in the legislature, our first homosexual lieutenant governor, and Jose pointed out, and our first openly pro-abortion governor. So who better than Leon Guerrero to abort an election that's already started?
It's still legal on Guam.
Yeah, let me check and see what Keith has got to say here. Hello, Keith.
Hi, Bob. I just wanted actually to take a step back to what some of the previous callers had said regarding the protest tomorrow and people, making their voices heard. I've been trying to talk it up amongst friends, coworkers, and things like that, and I've heard numerous. The response I've gotten from numerous people is that they're fearful. They're intimidated by the governor's tactics, and their immediate response was, "Well, I don't want to go to jail, and I don't want to pay $1,000 fine." And I don't want to. I can't criticize them. I mean, it's a legitimate concern, I suppose. But the alternative is just sort of sit there and take it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on do you think her, Madam Chancellor will send her brown shirts out to break up the protest?
I doubt it very much. And I would like to talk about this idea of people being fearful. This is my experience with people coming forward and standing up for something. And I had a lot of experience in what some of us refer to as the wars of bishop succession. The real governing word here, Keith, is comfort. People know that there's a certain amount of discomfort in coming forward and standing up for a particular principle, because there may be some people who don't agree with that particular principle. And it would be uncomfortable to have to deal with people in that circumstance. So an awful lot of people don't want to come forward, not because they're afraid. It's a lot easier to explain than being uncomfortable, but a lot of people just aren't comfortable coming forward and doing it. It kind of gets into what I was talking about the other day with the idea of the social group that you belong to. But it's the only way sometimes that progress can be made. The famous Edmund Burke, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is that good men do nothing.
Precisely. Well, yeah, thank you for responding so pointedly. That's exactly sort of what I was hoping could be stressed in the waning moments of today's show, and that enough people heard it. I'll be there with boots on, and I already got my signs made.
Well, I'd be there too, Keith, except I got to be here at Tall Tales. Jose and I would be there with bells on, but I wonder if I could talk you into being our remote reporter on the spot to call in and tell us how it's going.
Certainly, that would be enjoyable. I will certainly do that, and I can send some pictures afterwards as well.
Appreciate it, Keith. Thanks a lot for calling.
You're welcome. Have a nice day.
Okay. Well, Jose, it's about time for the home stretch, so let's go to Louisville, Kentucky, Churchill Downs.
All right.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon or call 646-1463.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, Louisville, Kentucky, Churchill Downs, heading down the home stretch at Tall Tales. And our Fred had so much fun riding on that Ferris wheel just a minute ago that he wants to get back on already. So have fun, our Fred.
Yeah, I wanted to the previous caller said about fear and everyone scared to come out. Well, we should do like how they did in the States. And they're all geared up in their masks and sunglasses and hats. And you can't be identified. Same thing can be done here, which I would call a UHO, unidentifiable human object. You can dress up like that and get out there, and we need to voice our right, our concerns, and if we don't stand, and you were saying earlier, if we don't stand up for our right, then who will? If we just be accepting of what they dish out, then we're no better. We're just in compliance or an accomplice and in what they're doing. I mean, if Martin Luther King didn't get up one day and didn't believe in what he felt and didn't march and walk, if Mahatma Gandhi didn't get up, then you wouldn't have the freedoms that we do enjoy right now. So everyone has to invoke the Martin Luther King, the Angel Santos, and the Mahatma Gandhi in them to get out there.
How about the Lady Forward movement? Would that count?
Yeah, that would, I guess.
It's a bunch of old lady. I mean, mature women.
Yeah.
Watch out there, Bob.
Yeah. So each person that's hearing it, invoke that in you to get out there, and fear cannot dictate anything here. If Martin Luther King was afraid, I mean, we wouldn't have BLM right now going on till this day, and voting rights and so forth. If what's her name, RBG, or Ruth Bader Ginsburg, if she didn't advocate for women's voting, women will still not have the right to vote. So someone has to get up, and each of us has that someone in us to rise and protest tomorrow.
Okay, those are all
Thanks, Bob.
good points, Fred, and I hope you inspired our listening audience out there. I just have a couple of comments here. I think Martin Luther King was the exact opposite of Black Lives Matter. Martin Luther King was a genius in knowing how to conduct a protest so as to win people over instead of beat them down. Black Lives Matter, obviously, if it has a genius, it's in how to beat people down.
Not by the color of your skin, but the content of your character.
Yeah, I mean,
that's Martin Luther King.
The power of the pen. He said so many things that people are still talking about today.
And I think our Fred was referring to Susan B. Anthony.
More than Ruth Bader. Yeah, Bader to Ruth Bader Ginsburg's credit, she did say that she thought Roe versus Wade should not have been decided when it was. She said if we'd have left it alone for 25 years, we wouldn't have the kind of conflagration that we have right now.
Maybe because all men decided Roe versus Wade.
I suppose that's probably it. Okay, so I got just a few minutes here, and I got something on Facebook that I'll pick up on really quick if I can find it again. Don AA Ed Kilani asks, some advice for Senator Jim Moylan. What is your impression of Bill 282? Well, as luck would have it, I guess I'm on Jim's pen pal list here. Yes, I have a letter from Jim Moylan. And Jim Moylan says that he is going to make an amendment to the budget bill that they're now wrestling with right now, which is Bill 282-35. By the time they're finished with it, it will be 300 or 400 pages long. But one of the interesting things about the budget is that the budget bill will have a section called miscellaneous provisions that does not appropriate money, but does change the way the government operates. So what Jim Moylan wants to do is insert language in the miscellaneous provision of the budget bill that says, doesn't say his letter's a little bit, doesn't have the bottom line up front. Yeah, it would prohibit elected officials who lose an election or do not seek re-election from attaining, I think he means obtaining, a job with the government for 12 months after their last day in office. So you lose an election or decide not to run, you can't go to work for the administration. That's basically what he's saying. You got to wait a year. And Jim is going to add that into the attempt to make an amendment, a floor amendment, and add that to the miscellaneous provisions of the budget bill. Now, the interesting thing about the budget bill is that things like what Moylan wants to do can be added to the budget bill without the necessity of a public hearing. So sometimes politicians will use that mechanism to avoid a public hearing and get measures passed that might not pass as standalone bills. Because if something goes into the miscellaneous provisions that there's strong opposition to, a senator would have to vote against the entire budget bill, and the governor would have to veto the entire budget bill to get at that one offensive section. So it's a political tool that a consummate politician can use to get things enacted into law that might not be able to make it in other manners. In Jim's case, I think he'd be better off going for this as a standalone bill. And now he's, people are going to say, well, the senators that are, senators who are afraid of losing, which is every one of them, wouldn't like that because then they wouldn't be able to go to work for the administration. Well, that's the kind of stuff that you want to introduce when you're in the minority, Jim. You want to put the majority on the spot every time you get the chance. With respect to the substance of a bill, is it a good idea? Probably. It's probably a good idea to say that no one who loses an election can bop over into the administration right away, or someone who decides not to run. We have a provision in the Organic Act right now that says that a member of the legislature cannot take a job that was created during the time that he was a senator, or a job for which the salary or emoluments were increased during the time that he was a senator, for a period of 12 months after he's out of office. This would be kind of like the same sort of thing. So this is going to be a test on Jim's skill as a senator. You know, there are senators and there are senators. There are senators who go to the legislature and take up space for 2 years and really don't know exactly what was going on. There are other senators that go to the legislature and know how to make things happen. A classic example is Jim with his bill to roll back the GRT. He introduced it early on in the legislature, was a good move, but he made it effective the following 1st of October. And then he finally got it to the floor. You remember that? But then, when he got it to the floor, he wanted time to make amendments, and the speaker wouldn't give him that time, so he withdrew his bill. That's what I mean by being a skillful senator and understanding the parliamentary rules and how to navigate a bill through the legislature. Okay, I'm going to pick up with Tina's bill tomorrow. This whole thing about aborting the election bears a fair amount of discussion. See you all tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Choppy weather ahead. Fox News, I'm Mary Corsetti. Louisiana braces for tropical storms Marco and Laura as they approach the shore. If both storms advance,